Hey, welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis, and this week I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite songs by the Sex Pistols. Some of my friends hate the Sex Pistols. They call them a punk rock monkeys. That's not a put down to me. I love the Monkees, and I love the Sex Pistols. Never mind the Bollocks. It's Pop Culture Graveyard. That sounded a lot cooler in my head. This episode of Pop Culture Graveyard is dedicated to 33 1/3 Helen, the scourge of turntables everywhere. And it's coming to you from your good friend and my main man, Tim. In my opinion, there are two great Sex Pistols records on vinyl. One is, of course, Never Mind the Bollocks. Here's the Sex Pistols, their 1977 debut album and final album, and Flogging a Dead Horse, which is an album that came out after the band was already dead, February of 1980 to be exact. I bought this at a flea market in the mid-80s. It was either at Aqueduct or Roosevelt Raceway, and this is a real kick-ass compilation. It features 4 of the singles that were released from the Bollocks album. It has 3 of those songs B-sides. It also has 6 A-sides from the Great Rock and Roll Swindle, the soundtrack from their film, which I'm not a big fan of, and 1 B-side, their version of My Way. The back cover, pretty much dramatizing an excerpt from the Great Rock and Roll Swindle. Luckily, the excrement here is made out of rubber. This album, as you can see, is all class. But let me tell you my favorite songs on the albums one by one. This is my original US copy of Nevermind the Bollocks. It came out in November of 1977. And this is a Jacksonville pressing, which you can tell from the info on the matrix. As you can see, it has a white label with black lettering. And the back of the album, you will see a space here where a late addition to the album, the song Sub.Mission, would later be added. And it came with a label that you could affix to the back cover where the track Sub.Mission should be, so that you would have all the songs on it. It has an original blue inner sleeve that I always thought was pretty cool, and in lots of ways cooler than the cover itself. And my list of underrated Sex Pistols songs are as follows. I love Pretty Vacant off this album. Pretty Vacant is the one Sex Pistols song that Glen Matlock wrote pretty much all by himself. Malcolm McLaren had come back from the States with a handbill from a television show back when Richard Hell was still in the band, and a couple of the songs in the set list jumped out at Glen. One was In the Arms of Venus de Milo, and the other was I Belong to the Blank Generation. Glenn saw that there was something missing in both of those songs, and he wanted to get that feeling across for the Sex Pistols, that there was something missing. At the sound check at the Nashville, he saw John Lydon covered in green light, which on his orange hair made him look pretty awful. And he thought of those 2 words, pretty awful. And he liked the idea of John in this hideous light singing, We're so pretty, oh so pretty. And then he thought, blank, I'll use vacant, and so Pretty Vacant came across. And in here, Glenn shares the secret that Pretty Vacant is basically 2 songs ripped off, jammed together. The main guitar riff is stolen from SOS by ABBA, and the chords for the chorus are lifted from Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am by the Small Faces. All of those cool tidbits are in the book. Anyway, Pretty Vacant, in my estimation, is the Pistols' best song. It pairs the coolest lyrics with the coolest music. John Lydon only changed a few lyrics, but they're very important to how we see the song in retrospect. Glenn wrote something like, if you don't like this, up your bum, we're going down to the pub. John changed it to, forget your cheap comments, we know we're for real. Anyway, you combine those final lyrics with the ABBA / Small Faces mashup, and you've got a killer tune. So that's my favorite all-time Sex Pistols song. Holidays in the Sun is my other favorite all-time Sex Pistols song. I just talked about it in my singles episode. EMI. Holy hell, this is a great fucking song. It's super short. It's basically a fuck you to EMI, one of several labels the Pistols were on in short succession. The band were on EMI for about 3 months before they were dropped because of the band's outrageous behavior on television. And the song is pretty much an FU to the record company itself for trying to appear like they were down with the punk movement, only to drop the band as soon as the band acted like punks. So they're basically calling out EMI for being the hypocrites that they were. It has an outrageously great guitar sound, and it is a super underrated track. Sub.Mission, the song missing from the back of the album cover, John Lydon and Glen Matlock wrote Sub.Mission together and each have fond memories of doing so. They traded lines back and forth at the pub, and then Glen went home and worked on some chords for it. The song came about because Malcolm McLaren had asked John Lydon to write a song about submission and sadomasochism. The name of Malcolm McLaren's shop was Sex, and so Malcolm gave them the title, Sub.Mission. John was not a big fan of Malcolm at the time, so John very cleverly broke up sub and mission, and he wrote the song about a guy on a submarine. I'm on a submarine mission for you, baby. I can't figure out your watery love. Sub.Mission is a killer song with the best bass work on any Sex Pistols song. Hence, it is the Sex Pistols song that is easiest to dance to. Next song is Satellite. It is the B-side of the Holidays in the Sun single B-side. John Lydon has talked about Sub.Mission being as close as the band ever came to a love song, but Satellite's chorus is simply, "Hey babe, I love you," repeated over and over. The satellite refers to the satellite towns around London where the bands were gigging, and I assume hooking up with girls. This song has been interpreted as John Lydon being on the phone with an ex-girlfriend, which may or may not be Shan Bradley from the band The Nipple Erectors, which was a band that also featured a young Shane MacGowan from the Pogues. Anyway, the track opens up with an Iggy and the Stooges-like intro before settling into one of the Sex Pistols' signature licks, and it is a great rocking guitar sound that the band have on this track. On Flogging a Dead Horse, I want to bring up the Sex Pistols' outrageously good cover of No Fun. It is a track that they recorded with Dave Goodman. It is a fantastic, raw, rocking version of No Fun, and it is the perfect cover song to suit this band among all the great covers they ever did. The intro to No Fun is one of my favorite John Lydon moments. A sociology lecture with a bit of psychology, a bit of neurology, a bit of fuckology. That's a fucking intro. Another underrated Sex Pistols song, Did You Know Wrong? It's got this wonderful descending guitar line. This song was the B-side for God Save the Queen, and I have always really loved it. It supposedly originated with Wally Nightingale, who was a very early member of the band who would later become the Sex Pistols, but he never really got any credit for it. Another very underrated song, Silly Thing. This is a cool late-era song from like 1979. It was after John Lydon had left the band, and it is sung by two people really. Steve Jones does a version, but the version that I like is the Paul Cook sung version. Paul Cook is of course the drummer for the Sex Pistols, and he did an excellent job on Silly Thing. Another underrated song, Believe It or Not, is the Sex Pistols version of My Way, made popular by Frank Sinatra. A lot of people never get past the intro, but once you get past that interminably long intro of the atonal wailing, the guitars kick in, the song begins rocking out, and Sid fucking kills it. He was seen as having a shot at being the future of the Sex Pistols before it was made abundantly obvious that he was too inept to do anything, given all the drugs in his system 24/7. But his cover of My Way is a fascinating glimpse into what might have been, and he did a surprisingly coherent job. Sid also, by the way, kills it on the two covers of Eddie Cochran's songs, Something Else and Come On Everybody. That's rockabilly greatness right there. And finally, the track No One Is Innocent, sometimes known as The Biggest Blow, which is basically referring to the beating that the singer of the song, Ronnie Biggs, gave to the conductor of the train that he robbed during the Great Train Robbery. Yes, the ex-Sex Pistols, Paul Cook and Steve Jones, flew to Brazil, went to his studio with great train robber Ronnie Biggs, who lived in Brazil because he couldn't be extradited to England to stand trial for the Great Train Robbery. And the three recorded this song, which features great guitar work, which is why I'm praising it, but reprehensible lyrics. It's not as bad as Belson Was a Gas, which is a song that I love musically, but I can't bring myself to recommend because of the reprehensible lyrics, which make light of the Holocaust. Speaking of which, The Biggest Blow credits Martin Bormann on bass. Their humor sucked, for lack of a better term, but Jonesy's guitar was always a selling point. The song mentions Nazis on the run. It mentions the Moors child killers, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. The song is Ronnie Biggs was doing time until he done a bunk. Now he says he's seen the light and he sold his soul for punk. The "until he done a bunk" line refers to Ronnie Biggs breaking out of prison, which happened. Believe it or not, The Biggest Blow, also known as Kosh the Driver, or No One Is Innocent, was released as an A-side with Sid Vicious's My Way on the B-side. They call it a double A-sided single, but one of them has to be the B-side, and that was Sid Vicious's My Way. A far, far superior song to The Biggest Blow. But you know the power structure of the band, and Sid was on the very bottom. For the rest of this week's episode, please join my Patreon at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard, or click above for more free content.